This is the story of a man who could have lied, but instead he told the truth, and that made all the difference. Today's story is called Honest to a Fault.
Season 4 of The Story features 8 veteran trailblazers whose sacrifices and service changed the world. The story is brought to you exclusively by Salesforce, the world's #1 customer relationship management platform. More than 150,000 businesses are using Salesforce to blaze their own trails to success. You can learn more by clicking the link in our show notes. And now, on to the story.
The recruiter sighed. "I can't show your resume to this company. Your background looks great, but you left off your education." The man on the other end hesitated. "Well, that's because I don't have a college degree." An awkward silence followed. The recruiter sighed. "Look, the leadership team at this company is highly educated. The VP of sales and marketing even taught computer science at Harvard. I can't present a candidate without a college degree. Why don't you just make something up?" The man swallowed. He was young and inexperienced. The recruiter went on to say that no one would really check. This was back in the days before the internet, so lying on resumes was rampant. It would be easy for him to lie. The man without a degree finally spoke. "I'll think about it," he said, and then he hung up. After a few days, he sent his updated resume to the recruiter. Soon after, he was called in for an interview. He met with the VP of sales and marketing. The VP held up his resume and said, "I've never seen a resume like this. That's why you're here. You don't have any college listed, and in the education section, you put the word Mensa? Why?" The man grinned. "Well, I thought that was going to get your attention." The VP stared at him and then responded, "Well, it did. So tell me, what'd you do in your other companies?" The man started to describe the electronics work he did. The VP stopped him and said, "Go to the whiteboard and draw it out for me. Teach me." For the next hour, the man drew electronics diagrams that he had worked on while the VP peppered him with questions. He ended up getting the job, without a college degree and without lying on his resume. So where had the man gained his cutting-edge experience? It hadn't been from some elite school or classes on theoretical applications.
By force of arms or by superior power.
It was during his time in the Air Force, during the Vietnam War.
Today ordered to Vietnam the Air Mobile Division.
When he was asked to describe that experience, the memories came flooding back.
Strength from 75,000 to 125,000 men almost immediately.
After completing electronics school, he was first stationed at a fighter base in Florida.
As requested.
During his first week on the base, the shop chief announced that they were looking for volunteers to go to Thailand. Most of the guys in the unit laughed and said, "You've got to be kidding. Thailand is way too close to the war zone for us to go." Another guy whispered, "Never volunteer for anything in the military." The young man who was honest to a fault heard it all, and he thought about it. They were all advising him to do the same thing, what they did, but he didn't want to be like any of them. Years later, he would look back on it and say, not volunteering was the sane path of safety, certainty, and comfort. But the young guy who was honest wasn't looking for safety, certainty, or comfort. So he raised his hand and said, "I'll go." 4 years in Thailand during the Vietnam War brought him in contact with a whole new cluster of smart electronics technicians. They took him under their wing and mentored him. When he looked back on this experience, he said, "What I didn't realize at the time was that I was being mentored by some of the senior enlisted guys, a decade or two older than me. I'm not sure it was a conscious effort on their part. I know it wasn't on mine. But what people don't realize is that mentorship is a two-way street. While I was learning from them and their years of experience and expertise, what I was giving back to them was equally important. I was bringing fresh insights to their data." This pattern of mentorship and win-win situations would shape his future career. After the war, the man randomly landed in Silicon Valley. He'd been living in Michigan, working for one of the only electronic companies in the area. The company sent him on a trip to San Jose, California. But at the time, no one at his company had even heard of San Jose. In fact, they accidentally bought him a ticket to San Jose, Puerto Rico. At the last minute, he caught it and got a ticket to the right San Jose. When he arrived, he turned on the radio. In between his favorite songs, he heard ads promoting jobs for scientists, engineers, and technicians. He was impressed. Then at the hotel, he saw another TV ad for a company looking for scientists and engineers. He couldn't believe it. San Jose was filled with opportunities for jobs that all required technical knowledge. He completed the work his company gave him to do in San Jose, but he didn't bother returning to Michigan. Instead, he put in his 2 weeks' notice, got in touch with a recruiter, and decided to tell the truth on his resume. The rest is history. Years later, he would look back on it and say, "To be fair, I didn't understand we were standing at ground zero of inventing the future. Here was an environment where what you could accomplish meant more than who you knew." The professionals he came in contact with mentored him, no strings attached. They had been helped by others in their fields, and then they paid it forward. That was the Silicon Valley ethos. Several of these professionals became lifelong mentors to the man as he moved to different companies, acquired new skills, grew his wealth, and eventually co-founded 4 companies. 2 of those companies resulted in successful IPOs, but the other 2 left craters in the ground. The successes outshine the failures in a major way. And the wonderful thing about Silicon Valley is that a few mistakes are just par for the course. After retiring, he moved from being an entrepreneur to writing about and teaching entrepreneurship. Much like how The Art of War captures key principles that Sun Tzu wanted to hand down to young warriors, the man wanted young entrepreneurs to learn from his experiences. He was invited to teach at Stanford, UC Berkeley, Columbia, NYU, and UC San Francisco. Along the way, he developed a model for developing a startup that bucked traditional business wisdom. He encouraged his students to develop theories, test them with the target audience, pull out the relevant insights, and then refine the concepts. The curriculum that he taught and designed is called customer development, and it's what inspired the entire lean startup movement that we see today. The guy in this story who was honest to a fault is Steve Blank. He's an Air Force veteran, serial entrepreneur, author, professor, engineer, marketer, philanthropist, and mentor to his best student, Eric Ries, author of The Lean Startup. Steve Blank could have chosen the easy path multiple times in his life, but that wouldn't have been the honorable path. It wouldn't have been a path that he was proud to look back on. Instead, he chose to tell the truth, even when others encouraged him to lie. He chose to volunteer, even when others encouraged him to lie low. He chose to take initiative, even when others let opportunities pass them by. And when the world encouraged selfishness, he chose to pay it forward. Steve Blank chose a path that was honorable, and that has made all the difference. That's his story. What's yours going to be?
Thanks for listening to The Story. If you love this and want more, tap subscribe to make sure you don't ever miss an episode. The Story is brought to you exclusively by Salesforce, the world's #1 customer relationship management platform. More than 150,000 businesses are using Salesforce to blaze their own trails to success. The Story is created by The Mission, a veteran-owned media company and podcast network. We create custom branded podcasts for world-class companies like Salesforce, Twilio, and Katera. To learn more, head over to themission.co and subscribe to our daily newsletter.